warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to my lecturer, Madam Rashidah binti Mat, and my fellow friends. My name is Iskandar Mirza bin Muhammad Rusni, and today I will be presenting my first unplugged project, which is a project entitled Food Chain Detective. This project was designed for Year 5 Science KSSR under the topic Food Chain. The content of this project is developed based on the document standard curriculum dan pentaksiran di SKP Science Year 5. Specifically, under Learning Standard 3.3.1, which requires pupils to state the meaning of a food chain, and Learning Standard 3.3.2, which requires students to identify producers and consumers in a food chain. The learning objective and activities in the project are aligned with this standard to ensure that the teaching process supports the intended curriculum outcomes. I selected this topic because the concept of a food chain is one of the fundamental topics in ecology. It is the foundation for students to understand how living organisms depend on one another for survival and how energy flows through an ecosystem. However, many students can memorize examples of a food chain without fully understanding the role of each organism or the relationship between producers and consumers. Therefore, I developed this project to transform abstract scientific concepts into meaningful and engaging learning experience through computational thinking. The project used a food chain detective team to increase pupils' curiosity and motivation. Instead of receiving information passively, students become detectives who investigate the relationship between different organisms. This inquiry-based approach encourages active participation and helps students construct their own understanding. Now, I would like to explain how this project can be used during a 30-minute teaching and learning session. During the first 5 minutes, I will begin the lesson with a set induction. I enter the classroom as a safari detective and display a large picture of a food chain consisting of the sun, grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, and eagle. I ask pupils several guiding questions such as, who is whom? What does this chain represent? And what do you think what will happen if the grass disappears? This question activates pupils' prior knowledge and create curiosity before introducing the lesson. From the 5th to 10 minutes, I explain the meaning of a food chain. I introduce the concept that energy moves from one organism to another. Beginning with the sun as a primary source of energy, students learn that green plants are producers because they produce their own food, while animals are consumers because they obtain energy by eating other organisms. At this stage, the first learning standard, which is explaining the meaning of a food chain, is achieved. Next, from the 10 to 15 minutes, a student works in a small group using organism cards provided in the brochure. Each group receives cards representing grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, and eagle. Students identify whether each organism is a producer or a consumer, determine what each organism eats, and explain its role within the food chain. This activity supports the Learning Standard 3.3.2 while encouraging discussion and collaboration. From the 15 to 20 minutes, students compare several examples of food chain from different ecosystems, such as grassland, forests, and aquatic habitats. They identify similarities between these food chains by recognizing that every food chain begins with an energy source, includes producers and consumers, and follows the same direction of energy flows. Between the 20 and 25 minutes, students apply higher order thinking skills, HOTS, through a real-life problem-solving scenario. I ask them to imagine that all the grasshoppers disappear off the trough. They discuss the impact of the grasshopper, frog, snake, eagle, and why this change occurs. This activity encourages students to understand that every organism plays an important role in maintaining ecosystem balance. Finally, during the last 5 minutes, students complete a short assessment and reflection activity. They identify producers and consumers, complete a simple food chain, and reflect on what they have learned. This allows to evaluate whether both learning standards have been achieved. Now, I would like to explain the computational thinking skill integrated into this project. The first computational thinking is decomposition. Decomposition refers to the process of breaking down a complex problem into smaller and more manageable parts. Instead of asking students to memorize an entire food chain immediately, this project guides them to analyze each organism individually. Pupils first identify whether an organism is a producer or a consumer. They then determine its food source and ecological role before combining all the organisms into a complete food chain. By solving one small problem at a time, students develop a deeper conceptual understanding and experience less cognitive overload. Therefore, decomposition makes the learning process more systemic, organized, and meaningful. The second computational thinking is as pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is the ability to identify similarities or repeated relationships across different situations. After analyzing several food chains, students recognize that all food chains share common characteristics. Every food chain begins with an energy source. Every ecosystem contains producers and consumers, and energy always flows in one direction. Once students recognize this pattern, they are able to predict and construct their own new food chain independently. even when introduced to an unfamiliar organism. This demonstrates knowledge transfer rather than simpler memorization. These two compositional thinking skills complement one another effectively. Decomposition helps students understand each individual component of a food chain, while pattern recognition enables them to connect these components into a broader scientific concept. Together, these skills center critical thinking, logical reasoning, and scientific understanding. In conclusion, this project successfully integrates science content with compositional thinking through engaging unplugged learning activities. It is fully aligned with the Year 5 Science DSKP, supports the achievement of Learning Standard 3.3.1 and 3.3.2, and promotes active learning, collaboration, and problem solving. Most importantly, students do not simply memorizing the food chain. They investigate, analyze, and construct their own understanding through meaningful learning experience. Thank you. So we will move to my next unplugged project, which is Graphic Organizer. So, this graphic organizer entitled Food Chain Detective. This graphic organizer was developed for Year 5 Science KSSR under the topic Food Chain. Similar to my project, this product is designed based on the Document Standard Curriculum dan Pentaksiran DSKP Year 5, specifically Learning Standard 3.3.1, which requires pupils to state the meaning of a food chain, and Learning Standard 3.3.2, which requires students to identify producers and consumers in a food chain. The content, activities, and learning flows are carefully organized to ensure that all learning objectives are achieved while supporting meaningful learning. I selected this topic because the concept of a food chain is a fundamental to understanding ecosystem. However, many students find it difficult to organize the relationship between producers, consumer, and energy flows. They often memorize examples without understanding why every organism has a specific role in maintaining ecosystem balance. Therefore, I designed this graphic organizer to simplify complex scientific information into a visual structure. Instead of reading long explanation, pupils can organize ideas systematically through diagrams, arrows, and flowcharts. This enables them to understand the concept more efficiently while developing logical thinking and problem-solving skill. Now, I would like to demonstrate how this graphic organizer can be implemented during a 30-minute teaching and learning session. During the first 5 minutes, I begin the lesson by displaying a complete food chain illustration. I ask students several guiding questions such as, where does energy begin? Which organism produce its own food? And why can animals survive without plants? These questions stimulate students' curiosity and activate their prior knowledge before introducing the lesson. From the 5 to 10 minutes, I explain the meaning of a food chain during the graphic organizer. Instead of providing lengthy notes, I present the information visually using a flow diagram showing the movement of energy from the sun to plants and finally to different consumers. Through this approach, students immediately understand the relationship between each organism and the direction of energy flow. Between the 10 to 15 minutes, students work individually to complete the missing part of the graphic organizer. They identify the producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer by placing each organism in the correct position. This activity directly supports Learning Standard 3.3.2 because students classify organisms according to their ecological roles. From the 15 until the 20 minutes, students compare different food chains provided by the teacher. They complete another section of the graphic organizer by arranging new organisms into the correct sequence. During this activity, they discuss why the sequence cannot be changed and explain the relationship between every organism. Between the 20 to 25 minutes, pupils apply higher order thinking skill by solving a real-life situation. For example, they are asked to predict what happens if the producer disappears from the ecosystem. Using the graphic organizer as a guide, pupils trace the flows of energy and explain how each consumer will be affected. This activity encourages scientific reasoning and strengthens conceptual understanding. Finally, during the last 5 minutes, pupils complete a short assessment and reflection. They construct their own food chain and using the graphic organizer and explain the movement of energy from the producer to the top consumer. This allows the teacher to assess whether both learning standards have been successfully achieved. Next, I would like to explain the computational thinking skills integrated into this graphic organizer. The first computational thinking is abstraction. Abstraction is the process of identifying the most important information while eliminating unnecessary details. In this graphic organizer, students are encouraged to focus only the essential components of a food chain, namely the source of energy, producers, consumers, and direction of energy flows. They do not need to focus on irrelevant information such as the color, size, or the habitat of the organism. By filtering out unnecessary details, pupils are able to understand the key scientific concept more clearly and effectively. This reduces cognitive load and helps students concentrate on the learning objective. The second computational thinking is algorithm design. Algorithm design refers to the developing a logical sequence of steps to solving a problem or complete a task. In this activity, students construct the food chain by following a systemic order. They begin with the sun as the source of energy, followed by the producer, then the primary consumer, secondary consumer, and finally the tertiary consumer. If the sequence is incorrect, the food chain is no longer represent the natural flows of energy. Therefore, pupils learn that every ecosystem follows a logical process and that scientific concept can be understood through organized step-by-step reasoning. The integration of abstraction and algorithm design enables students to organize scientific information systematically while strengthening logical thinking. Abstraction helps students determine what information is important, whereas algorithm design teach them how that information should be arranged into a meaningful sequence. Together, this compositional thinking skill improves student conceptual understanding and prepare them to solve more complex scientific problems in the future. In conclusion, the graphic organizer is not merely a visual learning but an instructional tool that promotes meaningful learning through compositional thinking. It is fully aligned with the Year 5 Science DSKP, supports the Achievement Learning Standard 3.3.1 and 3.3.2, and develops student ability to think critically, organize information logically, and apply scientific concepts effectively. Through the integration of abstraction and algorithm design, students are able to understand not only what a food chain is, but also how energy flows systematically through an ecosystem.
Hello, my name is Detective Iskandar. I want to explore about food chain, but at the same time, I want to play games. Oh, how about playing games while learning food chain? Sounds like a great idea. Let's go. Excellent! Energy flows correctly. Let's finish next challenge. Whoa! You completed all the missions successfully. Great job learning about ecosystems and food chains. See you on your next adventure, Detective.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to my respected lecturer, Madam Rashidah binti Mat, and my fellow classmates. Today, I am going to present my plugin project developed using Scratch programming. My project entitled Food Chain Detective or Eco Detective, an interactive educational game designed for Year 5 Science KSSR. This Scratch game was developed based on the Document Standard Curriculum dan Pentaksiran DSKP Science Year 5, specifically under Content Standard 3.3 Food Chain, which includes Learning Standard 3.3.1, the state the meaning of a food chain, and 3.3.2, identify producers and consumers in a food chain. The entire game was designed to ensure that pupils achieve this learning standard through interactive learning instead of traditional memorization. I selected this topic because the food chain is one of the most important concepts in ecology. Although students are able to memorize examples of food chain, many still struggles to understand the relationship between producers, consumers, and the flow of energy in an ecosystem. Therefore, I developed this Scratch game to transform abstract scientific concept into meaningful learning experience through exploration, interaction, and compositional thinking. Unlike conventional worksheet, Scratch allows students to become active participants in the learning process. They are required to make decisions, solve problems, receive immediate feedback, and improve their understanding through interactive mission. This makes learning more engaging, enjoyable, and student-centered. Now, I would like to demonstrate this Scratch game can be implemented during a 60-minute teaching and learning session. During the first 10 minutes, I begin the lesson by introducing the topic using the opening of the game. Pupils are welcomed as a food chain detective and are introduced to the learning objective. This introduction captures student attention, increases curiosity, and prepares them of the learning activities ahead. From the 10 until the 30 minutes, pupils begin mission 1, which is a drag and drop activity. Pupils drag each organism into its correct position in the food chain. They must think carefully about the ecological role of every organism before placing it correctly. If the answer is correct, the game provides immediate positive feedback, while incorrect answer encourage students to try again. Throughout this activity, students actively identify producers and consumers while understanding the correct sequence of energy flows. Between the 13 and 15 minutes, pupils students continue with mission 2, which is a multiple choice challenge. They answer question related to the food chain by selecting the correct option. Every answer is followed by immediate feedback, allows students to identify mistakes and improve their understanding instantly. This continuous interaction increases engagement while strengthening conceptual understanding. Finally, during the last 10 minutes, pupils reach at the congratulation page where they complete the game and reflect on what they have learned. At this stage, the teacher leads a class discussion by asking students to explain why producers are important, how energy flows throughout a food chain, and what will happen if one organism disappears from the ecosystem. This reflection helps reinforce scientific understanding and enables the teacher to assess whether the learning objectives have been achieved. Next, I would like to explain that computational thinking skills are integrated throughout this TRASH project. The first computational thinking is decomposition. Decomposition refers to breaking down a complex problem into smaller and more manageable parts. Instead of asking pupils to understand an entire ecosystem immediately, this TRASH game guides them step by step. During mission 1, pupils first identify each organism individually before arrange them into a complete food chain. By analyzing each component separately, pupils develop a stronger conceptual understanding and solve the problem systematically rather than through memorization. The second computational thinking is pattern recognition. Pattern recognition involves identifying similarities and repeated relationships. As pupils complete different food chain activity, they begin to recognize common patterns. They realize that every food chain starts with the sun as the energy source, followed by consumers and followed by the producers and the consumers. Once these patterns are recognized, pupils can confidently predict and construct their own new food chain, even when different organisms are introduced. This demonstrates genuine conceptual understanding rather than simple recall. The third CT skill is abstraction. Abstraction requires students to focus only one information that is relevant to solving a problem. During the game, pupils concentrate on the role of each organism and the direction of energy flows. They ignore unnecessary information such as the size, color, or habitat of the organism because these details do not affect a structure of a food chain. By identifying only the essential information, students solve problems more efficiently and understand the scientific concept more clearly. The fourth CT skill is algorithm design. The algorithm design is process of developing a logical sequence of a step to solve a problem. In mission 1, student must arrange organism following the correct order of energy transfer. The sequence always begins with the sun, followed by the producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. If the sequence is incorrect, the food chain cannot function properly. Throughout this activity, students understand the scientific process followed by logical and systemic order, similar to how computer programs execute instructions step by step. The final CT skill is evaluation. Evaluation is one of the most important CT skills because it allows students to assess and improve their own solution. Throughout the Scratch game, students receive immediate feedback after every interaction. If an answer is incorrect, they are encouraged to analyze their mistake, think critically, and attempt the question again. This trial and improvement process develop resilience, self-reflection, and independent problem-solving skill. Rather than simply being told the correct answer, students evaluate their own thinking and refine their understanding throughout repeated practice. Besides integrating CT skill, this Scratch also incorporates several important 21st century learning elements. It promotes active learning because students participate directly in every mission instead of passively receiving information. It encourages critical thinking as students analyze relationship between organisms before making decisions. The game also increases motivation through interactive animation, colorful graphic, and immediate feedback, creating an enjoyable learning environment that enhances student interest in science. In conclusion, Eco-Detective successfully integrates science content, digital technology, and CT and computational thinking into a meaningful learning experience. The game is fully aligned with the Year 5 DSKP and supports the achievement of Learning Standard 3.3.1 and 3.3.2. More importantly, students do not simply memorize the food chain. They investigate, analyze, solve problems, evaluate their own understanding, and construct knowledge independently through interactive learning. Therefore, this Scratch project demonstrate how educational technology can be effectively develop scientific understanding while simultaneously nurturing computational thinking skills required for the 21st century learners. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.